was just like a little room with a table, and the judge sat at the head, and the lenders sat there, and I sat here, and they were wanting to take the house. And the judge said, Mr. Scotland, you can get a job. And it was at the time when the interest rates, remember when there was that crash and the interest rates were so high, and 50% unemployment in Liverpool, there was no way I could get a job. You can get a job, Mr. Scotland, so I will write an order that as long as you pay the interest, I won't allow them to take the house, but if you miss a payment, they don't even have to come before me. They'll take the house, and that's when I got the invite to minister at Toronto in '97, another drink. And at the time I was on what we call Social Security in England, and they pay the interest on your house, you understand? So I had the choice. Am I rambling off? Right?
No, go for it.
I had the choice to either stay in what you thought was a safe place, you know, let the mortgage be paid, or take this conference and maybe the earnings and a tour I was doing, and the earnings would give me 6 weeks. You understand? Being able to pay the mortgage. And Jeannie and I decided, let's go for it. Let's come under the restrictions of the state that, you know, just want to keep you just barely living. And we went for it, and that's when I got really drunk. And there was a businessman in Canada. When I got back, I did a 6 weeks tour, and this businessman in Canada, we were all drunk on the floor actually at home. You know, we're having, you know, the Lord had come and the presence of God was there. And he said, he called me and he said, I can't sleep. I've got to pay your mortgage. And I've got to pay the interest on your mortgage each month. And I want to pay for your flights to come to America. And I want to set up the speaking itineraries for you. So for that first year, you know, we were okay, and we've never looked back since, you know, that God has provided for us. Yeah. Now, I got way off the subject there, but I'm trying to share with you, it's not all what seems, you know, partying, you understand? The joy, you know, the joy of the Lord, you know, but there is a cost to it. And what I realized was, you know, when the rejections come, I realized I couldn't have inner healing for that because it was part of the call. You understand that the prophets were stoned, and I used to tell people, get stoned, meaning get so drunk before you get stoned, so that you don't feel the stones, like what you mentioned. Who was it? Philip? Stephen. Said he opened up, you know, his eyes were opened and saw the glory, and, you know, I don't think he felt the stones. In fact, I preached my first sermon when I got drunk on martyrdom in the last 2 years at my church. You know, as a pastor, drunk, the last 2 years drunk were better than the previous 10 years sober. And I preached my first sermon on martyrdom. And you never heard that, you never heard a sermon on martyrdom. You know, yet 11 out of the 12 were martyred. It was in a meeting, I was so drunk I took a broom, and the broom became a chariot. And I began to sing, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan. What did I see? A band of angels coming after me. And I stopped at the secretary. Want to get on board? And I said to the two beside her, well, I think, be careful, because if you're in the same, you get the overflow of what we were talking about last night when you come to catch. You get it as well. But I saw a different vision of what martyrdom was, that God gives us the grace to it. We have to go through it, and it's something glorious. But the secret places, it's your lifeline. It's your lifeline. The meetings aren't your lifeline. The gatherings aren't your lifeline. Your lifeline is your secret place. Now, coming back to the numbers, I'm talking about journaling. I have a digital journal and I have a pen and paper journal. In the early days, I was trying to go paperless. Yeah, you can go paperless. You're going to have everything digital, be able to search it and bring out any keywords that you want. But I learned something that you needed the two. You need the paper and the pen. And there's something about the pen when you hold it in your hand that links with something up here. I can't explain it, but it links with something up here. And when you just begin to pour out, you don't even have to write in. When I look at that book, Rhoda, he gave me a wonderful script writing that the guy did. You don't even have to write like that, You just unload everything on the page of how you feel and where you are. And then somewhere along the writing, you come into another realm. You begin to hear God speak, and then you begin to write what He says to you. Have the courage, write the vision, make it plain. That he that runs, is that the right word? He that receives it can run with it. Write the vision. And so for me, that's a number one, bro. That's not a. If you really want to move into the glory, you've got to have your secret place, personal secret place between you and God. And just journal. That's a good one for you, that, with your situation. Journal all the garbage out.
It's in here, believe me.
Yeah. Journal all the garbage out. Just journal, lay it all out. And then I have sticky notes. My wife thinks I've got Alzheimer's because she goes in the room and she sees the whiteboard full of sticky notes. Because her dad, got Alzheimer's in his last years. He was an accountant and he got Alzheimer's in his last years. And after he passed away, we went into his office, and there on the checkbook was how to write, how to check. With sticky notes, because he couldn't remember. But I said, no, Gene, it's just part of this. When I'm journaling, if an idea comes, or if I've got, got to do this, I jot it on a yellow sticky note, I date it, and I put it on I have like a desk, what do you call that, desk slope, and I stick it on there, and then I look, and I date it, and I look at it, and know it's me online, but it stops me from breaking the flow.
That's good.
And the reason why you should do it every day is because it gets you into the flow, it gets you into the rhythm. back to when I was talking about the naps, you know, having a nap. We're in Waterstones and yeah, my son will go, he does a lot of research, you know, does a lot of research online, but he does a lot of research in our life, and he'll come and say, this is a good book, Dad. And on the book was a deck chair. The cover of the book was a deck chair, and the title was Rest. And sometimes, you know, you tend to think, well, you know, John's got another thing that he's given me to do, you know. But I began to read it, and I discovered that during the Second World War, Churchill used to go to bed for a nap. He'd put his pajamas on, and he'd go to bed midday, and he would have a nap. And the result of that was that he was able to operate, you know, like he was getting 2 days in one, and he was able to operate. Hitler was on drugs, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
But then I also realized that God speaks to you in dreams, because the dream goes beyond your mental capacity, and you receive stuff while you're dreaming. He says to me, John, you talk in your sleep. You have conversations in your sleep. Sometimes you sit up straight in bed. She gets a shock, you know. Have this conversation. So now I realize that rest isn't a waste of time. Actually, your brain is working, and it's sorting out. You know that phrase, sleep on it? You got a problem, sleep on it, because when you wake up the next morning, usually you get the problem solved, because your brain has been working out all the stuff with the filing cabinets and, you know, whatever you want to call it, but then you get the answer. So when I look at a nap, I look at it as not a waste of time, but God, allowing God to bypass my logic and impart a dream to me. So a dream isn't just something that's fluffy, you know, green fields. And if you read the Old Testament, most of the prophets have dreams or received. And who was it? Joseph was an interpreter of dreams. I didn't mean to go this way tonight, but that's the way it is going. You know, I mean, it's a nice, gentle night. This is the type of meeting I like. It's a nice, gentle flow. But coming back to the journal and coming back to the numbers, and coming back to how do I bring this from heaven to earth? Again, for me, it's the Fibonacci, which brings the perspective of the revelation that God has given me. And I take a dotted journal, a little bit wider than an A5, and it's quite a cheap journal. It's called Note Taker or something like that. And it's all dots. And have you ever heard the phrase, join the dots? So then I count the dots going down. That sounds crazy, but it sounds crazy. But I count the dots going down, and sometimes it changes. I do an 8 dot wide. Sometimes I do a 13 dot wide, because it's a Fibonacci number. And then the vertical line, I'll do 4, which is the doorway, the Hebraic, the Dalet, the open door into, you know, the revelation. Then at the top I date it, I put the week number. It's all part of Psalm 90, verse 12. Teach me to number my days, and that's what I'm doing, I'm numbering my days. it's the secret place of the Most High. Here dwells in the secret place. A number of years ago, the Lord said to me, I want you to get up early in the morning. I said, Lord, I'm only human. You know, I need my 8 hours sleep. He said, I don't want you to put an alarm clock on. I'll wake you up. And since then, he's waking me up. One time he woke me up at 3 o'clock. But the funny thing is, when he woke me up, I was, you know, like he energized me. And I went downstairs and started on my journal, and the Lord spoke to me and he said, I've called you. I've chosen you. You see, like in England, our nature is, oh no, not me. You know, Jeremiah, I can't speak. Not me, Lord. No, he says, I've chosen you. I'm sending you. You are to take your place. You are to take your position. You're representing me. I've been doing that every morning. Sneaking out the room so I don't wake Jean up, you know. Wake up, sleepy Jean. Da, 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 da.
Daydream.
I did I say that wrong?
The monkeys.
Is it the monkey?
Yeah,
Davy
Davy's the
Jones,
monkeys,
yeah.
yeah.
Wait, what's the words? Wake up, sleepy Jean.
What can it mean to a daydream believer and a
Homecoming queen.
Don't ask me anymore. That's all I remember.
Be a monkey fan for that one.
God's good.
Yes.
God is good. I used to have you know, when you're out itinerant, on my second year itinerant, I think that second year itinerant, I was getting on a plane in Atlanta, and there was a pastor there, an American pastor who was pastoring in England, and I knew him from some of the meetings. And, you know how they say business class first? And he went on in business class, right? And he said to me, "Are you not going business class?" I said, "No, I go to the next level. It's frequent flyer, you know, level. I'll get on the next level." So I met him halfway through the aisle, going through the first class, you know, to get into the economy seat. When I got to the economy seat, I complained to the Lord, this guy's only going once and he's going business class. I'm traveling for you, you know, with my knees up to my chin. 8 to 9 hours on a plane. You know, could I not go business class? Anyway, my daughter got a job with US Air. It's not like, it's now American, but and she lived in Italy for 6 years, so she could speak fluent Italian. So she was on the Italian desk. For that second year, I still traveled economy while my daughter was working for US Air, and then somebody said to me, "You're a dad, you can get a pass." So I said to Sean, "Can I get a pass?" She said, yes, Dad, you can. I'll have a word with the supervisor, and they activated it on the computer, and I was able to travel business class for $100.
Wow.
Oh,
I had to go onto the site and see if there was a seat available, but, you know, and so Jean and I one time were traveling business class across the Atlantic, and Jean was reading a book called The Simple Life. I said to her, "Well, you realise where you're sitting and what, you know, for $100, and then anywhere in the US for $29. Yeah. But you know what was the blessing? If I was in England today and I wanted to fly to America tomorrow, I only had to go onto the website, you know, that they have, and see if there was a flight available, and I could go. You know, I didn't have to, usually you have to book 2 weeks out or something to get the right fare. So you know, God gave me the benefits of what people were trying to get in ministry by, you know, we'll get a big name and I'll be able to travel first class. I had you know, in a sense, yeah, you know, what's the word?
The inside track?
Person on the inside, yeah.
Not just person on the inside, what I'm trying to say is, you know, they looked on the ministry as something that was weird or odd or, you know, but God was giving me all the perks.
Yeah.
thank you, Lord.
So one day I was flying to Canada and I had a meeting, and it was the busy time of the season and I couldn't get a flight standby. And I had a lady who was my secretary in Charlotte. And I said, I've got to be there by tomorrow because, you know, I promised these people I'd be there. So she said, hang on, John, I'll just research. And she said, you can get a one-way ticket. I think it was £1,500 one way,
Wow.
because of the short, and it's a one-way ticket, right? So we debated, should I go? And then I was doing the maths, you know, I'm going to a small church. I'm not going to cover, you know, this trip. So I just said to Gwen, just book the ticket and I'll go. Well, previously, before I went, I was in my office and I was talking to the Lord, and I said, I'd like a nice Italian suit, Lord. I like the way the Italians dress, you know. They're the best, you know, in the suits and everything. I'd like an Italian suit. So anyway, I get to the church, and this guy says to me after the meeting, can we have lunch together? And he says, I want to bless you. I want to take you to my tailor's.
Ah,
I said, I want to buy you anything that you want off the rack. You know, so, you know, don't be shy. And I bought a $2,000 suit. I'm going back a few years. Shirt, tie. And I called Jean. I called Jean and I said, guess what, Jean? I just got a suit. $2,000 suit. She said, what? I could have got you 10 suits. She's a charity shop, you know. She's a thrift store. She likes the thrift store, you know, tell her you can have anything you want in the thrift store. Even if she had all the money in the world, she'd still go to the thrift store. And that's where she was today when I called. In the thrift store. I said, Jean, no, this is a prophetic sign. The suit is like Superman, you know, goes into the phone box. Where else? But on top of that, she still argues with me that it didn't look any different than a $200 suit. You know? But on top of that, the smallest congregation, they took the biggest offering in their history.
Wow.
That covered the $1,500 ticket and the rest of the trip.
wow.
Right? Now, I could have said, no, it's too expensive. You know, let's reschedule. But I knew the Lord wanted me there, and sometimes you have to go. And it's the small places, it's the small places where the blessing is, bro. You know what I mean? It's the small places, less work. So this trip, you know, I'm really blessed by your seed offering. Because I really was not, I wasn't coming for the money, you understand? The Lord said, it's not about the money this trip. It's about the relationship. When you take time with the small groups, you know, build a relationship. It's not just good enough to do things online. You've got to have the touch, the feel, and the hug, and the talk, face to face. So this trip is all small groups. So I want to thank you for being faithful. But I want you also, see, because the Lord had been speaking to me about generosity, you know, giving away stuff, because I think sometimes in the church we get too business-like, and it becomes a corporate business, and you've got, you know, most of the failings that we're seeing in the church is money, you know. It's super nice to meet you all. Really.
It's our
Just-
pleasure.
Yes.
Just, you know, Mary, you know, the banter we had this morning. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You don't get that in a big church.
That's for sure.
You go into the
Yeah.
green room. No, you know that. You know that, sure. One of the prophecies that Bobby Connors gave us about this crazy anointing was that it would break things. And he said a word similar to Benny Hinn. I didn't know who Benny Hinn was, right? But and he said, soak up Benny Hinn. I never really did, you know, because it wasn't mine. But I looked at the back of the book and you know. So I went to Minneapolis and the gatekeeper, Larry Alberts, knew Bob Jones, not Bob Jones, knew
Bobby Connor.
Bobby Connors, and we showed him the tape, you know, we had the tape, we still have the recording of what, because he didn't know us, and we told him what Bobby Connors had prophesied, so we called Bobby Connors. Bobby Connors couldn't remember the prophecy he gave, but what he saw was an oak tree with roots spreading underground, unseen, mystical, hidden, a network. So I brought my son with me to Minnesota, and he had got a contract working with oh God, what's the name of the tree place? It's where they manage forest, and you see it on the back. This is a sustainable. It's an international company based in Switzerland, and they asked him would he do a project on trees, a video project, so he had to go to certain places. And he discovered that trees talk through their root system. So that when one tree is being attacked, you know, by an insect, yeah, it would send a message to the other trees, and the other trees would produce a chemical in the leaves that
Wow.
would protect against this infestation.
Wow.
The key was it was hidden. And then he drew a drawing on the board about a ship and everybody looking for the next wave. And they're still waiting, so they build a school, sell t-shirts, books, waiting for the next move. And the next move was happening underground, unseen. It was going to explode. of place.
Those roots of the trees actually use mycorrhizals, which are a fungus.
Fungus, yeah.
It's a fungus,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the greatest communicative system in our, on Earth. Just hearing that mycorrhizals, and even trees can protect they know their young, their offspring too, and they use that kind of, I guess it's almost like, how salt water is to electricity. It's the way that, it's the roads of the communication. Yeah, it's so cool.
What's your name again?
Nancy.
You covered your name, chapter, so people say, yeah, Nancy.
Yeah.
I said to Paul after this morning's meeting about you, Nancy, that you're a seer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see things.
I do.
Yeah. A creator.
Mm.
So I suppose the main message really, Sean, was what you gave at the beginning there. If you want to take notes, that was the main, and I just wanted to chat about today. That's great. This evening. Yeah. Any questions?
Not a question, but what I heard, what you shared tonight was you were given this gift in this ministry, and by the way it affects you, it can be a benefit to some people, but a burden to others, or an offense to others. And so when you make a choice to go and speak or be a part of a teaching, you are always coming up against that. Is that correct?
Yeah, even when I think I've explained it
Yeah.
without the craziness, they still get offended.
Yes.
But their offense is against their own sin.
Right, but it's a risk. Every time he makes that decision, he's a risk taker.
Right.
And God gives people the ability to be a risk taker and to move forward in that.
But he also gives you some keys as well.
Yes.
Some protect, like when they have it, they bring in, say in a movie, they'll bring in, what do they call those people?
Stuntman?
Stuntman. They've actually eliminated as much as possible the things going wrong. Yeah. So one of the things, if I'm going to somewhere new, like here, I won't stay a week. 2 days, 3 days at the most. Why? Because if this place turned out to be
Unacceptable.
Right.
yeah,
It's gonna be a long week.
No, yeah, you're stuck, you're
You're
stuck.
stuck,
Yeah.
But at least I can get out of town.
My sisters.
But the reason
days,
why I'm
good.
bringing this up is.
She's trying to compliment.
No, a compliment, understand, engage what you were saying. For me, I'm a natural risk taker, but I'm also fearful of rejection. So I don't wanna, take that risk all the time. What's gonna happen?
Yeah, but I think, Mandy, for me, I'm a serious person. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a serious person. And I can't take credit in a sense of, like tonight's meeting is just a nice quiet meeting, and I like that. I like that. But the first night, some people would consider crazy. The danger is, the more you get in these crazy meetings, it becomes normal to
Of course.
to you, but to people for the first time, it's off the Richter scale. Yeah. And I thought that Sean described it beautifully, Sean, on the multi levels, and the coming in, but it's the spirit,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's not me, you know. And you'll hear many a comedian say, "There's two of me. There's the comedian,
And then there's the series.
and then there's the serious one." Most
Yeah.
comedians are serious,
Yeah.
yeah, in their private life.
Yeah.
And it's like it's another person that, and really it's the Holy Spirit,
Yes.
and that's what people have to recognize.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
Mhm. I just kept going through my head the whole time you were talking. And it's something that I've taken risks and gotten burned really bad, really bad. And so to step out in the Spirit's gifting, it's risky. It's risky. But what I love is that you've learned ways to work with it. Shorter meetings, shorter days, you know.
Oh, on the first time, you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. But there are times, you know, when you go to a place, and you know, like over the years, I've noticed it, that the craziness hits more. I didn't think that the first night was really crazy. I just thought it was a fun night.
Yeah.
It wasn't a crazy night.
No.
In my standards, not a crazy night.
I've seen crazy.
I've seen crazier, yeah.
And you taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but usually when it's off the scale
Mhm.
and it's really crazy, God's breaking things.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
that.
He's breaking things. So I realise that, and it's wonderful to watch a congregation, and you literally see the change on their faces. You know.
Yeah.
I thought that Paul, you did a wonderful photograph there, and the comment, "Who is this guy?"
Oh. That was Clark and Debbie, and they were just like looking at each other, kind of. And I added the comment in the photo.
Actually,
Yeah.
you just caught the moment.
Pull a picture to show the people.
Oh, I'll look for the picture. Can I gotta this? You guys know my cross, Chris and my cross, okay? With Ryan, in particular, and I offer this thought to you, Manny, because I knew what was troubling you when you said that. You know, given that John was stirring with his testimony, and I sat down in my secret place with the Lord. This is only 3 days ago now, and I had a lengthy conversation with the Lord, and I shared it with Chris when I got home, didn't I? I said, you know, I talked to the Lord, and it's good. It's good because God's purpose for us is to become Christ-like. And what that means in who I am looks different than what it looks like in you and with John. And each one of us has different areas that are difficult. But it's all meant to